Hello, and welcome to episode 89 of Prose. This week, ride public transportation with a vampire. And, all throughout life, whatever you do, don't be silent. I am rather excited for this week's tales, let me be honest. Then again, I guess I am always excited for the fictional adventures we all get to share together. Anyway, before we get started in earnest this week, I'd like to take a moment to thank all of my patrons on Patreon. You Patreon supporters are all really making a difference in how and when and, well, let me not bloviate. All of you make a real difference to me and to the show for us all. You rock. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Also, for everyone, please do go follow the show on social media under @ProsePodcast across all platforms. Even more amazing would be if you could head on over to Apple Podcasts and leave a rating and or review for Prose. Ratings and reviews for this show set it up for going on well into the future. For easiest access to the show, subscribe using whatever podcast catcher floats your boat. And lastly, and most assuredly, you too should check out the Prose Patreon page at patreon.com/ProsePodcast and consider supporting the show there. Not only will I be eternally grateful, you'll get some cool swag out of the deal. Thanks for listening. Let's get to the tales, shall we? This week, we have The Sea Train and Noise. Enjoy. The Sea Train, an original short story by Jared I. McGee. Public transportation gets a bad rap. That's a given in almost every city in the world that actually has public transportation. Where I grew up, the only public transportation we needed was our own two legs. That tired little joke wasn't exactly true even when I was a youngling. Now that I am older, I recognize it for what it was. Humor masking a town and a people that were under the boot of socioeconomic depression, repression, oppression. I've come a long way since thinking that public transportation was some sort of awful handout that took away from one's life experience. I miss my home. I miss my family. I do not miss my life being dependent on how quickly I could jog somewhere and still look somewhat respectable for an interview, or a shift, or an audition. Since my younger days, I've moved on into larger cities, going from place to place, from job to job, only ever worried about money and how I could live a semi-comfortable life while still being able to send some money back home to my family to help them eat and generally struggle a bit less. After pinging around the U.S. for the better part of 2 decades, it was only proper that I would eventually end up on the East Coast, and then in the city of all cities, New York City. The coasts have an inertia to them, and it's rather difficult to avoid ending up on one or the other. LA had me for some time. LA's public transportation was atrocious, almost non-existent. I once read an article by Matt Novak of the Smithsonian called "Nobody Walks in LA: The Rise of Cars and the Monorails That Never Were." It was one of many pieces I read explaining to me why the public transportation in Southern California wasn't any better than it was. Even out so far away in LA though, New York's pool was too great, and I eventually landed a job that, at least on the surface, looked like it would provide me with a few creature comforts while allowing me to send even more money back home to the family. So, New York it was. My entire life, I've known that I wasn't social per se. Yet, I also know that I need to be around people, I need to have some form of affection and intimacy in my life with other humans. Touch, in particular, being of great import. Need. Not want. Need. When I don't have that touch quota, I find myself getting sickly, tired more easily, and more quickly, short of temper, short of breath. Put simply, without physical touch, I begin to waste away. It wasn't until I spent my first 3 inconsecutive years in St. Louis before I realized that this odd observation might be something important, something I should pay a bit more attention to. There, as I worked and worked and worked to ensure my family a better life, I also had the opportunity to mill around in larger venues for music or alcohol or dancing. It didn't matter. All that mattered were the people that would bump into me as they scooched closer to the stage, maneuvered toward the bar for another drink, or ground and shimmied to whatever the DJ was playing at the time. Those brief moments of human contact set fireworks off in my brain. It was like drinking a pot of coffee and taking one of those yellow jacket pills my trucker uncles used to take with each little brush of skin on skin. It must have been obvious in just how nice this was for me, as a little old woman once approached me at a crowded farmer's market, taking me to the side and telling me that she, quote, knew what I was. This mysterious and somewhat ominous entry into discussion quickly changed pace when I agreed to walk and talk with her. Her name was Iona, and she said that vampires were real. I, of course, scoffed. She said that vampires were more subtle and varied as a species than only needing blood. She told me about psionic vampires and sanguineal vampires, and, most importantly to me, she told me about pathetic vampires. Pathetic as in from the Greek. She told me of emotional vampires. Apparently, pathetic vampires gained energy from a variety of things. For example, the equally loathed and lusted after succubi and incubi derived their strength largely from sexuality and engaging in various carnal activities. Dolorous pathetic vampires leached in energy and power from sadness, frequenting funerals and gravesites in hospitals. Thymotic pathetic vampires craved anger. Phobotic pathetic vampires hungered for fear. Iona didn't know which one I was exactly, but she knew that I needed some sort of emotional response based on physical touch. She could apparently all but see and smell it on me as I bumbled about the farmer's market feigning clumsiness in hopes of human contact. Iona brought up a very good point. She wanted to know why I didn't just seek out a relationship in order to get that physical affection that kept me so sharp, so stealthy, so healthy, and so charged. To that, I had no good answer. It wasn't like I didn't try to get and keep significant others, but I guess I just wasn't very good at either part of that equation, the getting or the keeping. Certainly I'd noticed, I told her, that when in loving relationships I was damn near unstoppable. A god among mortals, really. With her pointing this out to me, the relationship between how I was acting and interacting with the world when I was saturated in affection versus when I was not became all the more clear. For the better part of a month, after this wonderful windfall in a farmer's market, I'd see Iona twice a week, there at that same market. We'd chat and walk, and she'd further convince me of the truth of her words. That was 7 years ago now. I've had no more luck in love than your average schmuck, I fear. So that crackle of energy I got from physical touch is all too rare. I've also been constantly questioning that ridiculous notion that Iona planted in my head back in St. Louis. Sure, I enjoy physical touch and I feel less than myself without it, but I don't know if I can fully leap into the fantastical idea that vampires are real, much less that I myself am some form of pathetic vampire. It all seems so strange and so beyond the pale now that I don't have Iona sitting next to me, strolling next to me, holding my hand, talking, encouraging me to think in that direction. Those thoughts return to me rather often now that I am in New York City, though. My job here is all but all-consuming, so I don't have time to really take a good crack at forming any relationship that would help me further prove or disprove Iona's hypothesis. I do get flashes of that energy, or at least what I have convinced myself are injections of energy, when I ride the bus. But buses are a bit less crowded, a bit less frequented than the subways. Now there is some public transportation at its best. To a worldly guy that began his life without access to such options, the subway system is all but magical. Zipping across the 5 boroughs is a neat little game to the uninitiated, and just as powerful. I'm often squished up against strangers, sitting up, standing. That side-to-side contact makes me think back to Iona's insistence of what I was, and why I was so very drawn to contact with others. I ride the C train more than most, simply because it's nearby. But it also does me the service of servicing a rather diverse set of people, meaning that I get all sorts of different people sitting close to me during those rush hours that I have now come to crave. The best ride I've had recently was with a friend of a friend. It was on the C train because, again, it services my little niche of the world far better than most of the other subway options. We were returning to Manhattan for some reason that escapes me. The train was empty, as it was later in the evening and long past the droves of people trying to get from here to there and there to here. I wrote that trip off as one where I wouldn't get that perceived jolt from all the beings canned up together. But, to my surprise, my friend of a friend leaned up against me, propping her head on my shoulder, tired from a long day. The long day seemed to have her ready to nap, and the hour to her stop seemed to be enough for her to decide to lie back and get comfortable for a quick cat nap. This purposeful physical contact was like when I put my tongue to batteries on dares as a child. It was like what I'd always read cocaine users describing a bump was like. It was like the best, most pure day I've ever had. It was overwhelming. Her arms encircled my left arm. The crown of her head snuggled its way into the nape of my neck. Her legs bare from the skirt she was wearing touched my legs bare from the shorts I was wearing. All that contact was beyond me. My breath caught. I thought my heart might explode. In that moment, I couldn't help but allow my pendulum swing of rationalizing things go sharply back the other way. Maybe Iona was right. This went far beyond simple thirst for affection after a major lack thereof, surely. This was something else. For that roughly 50 minutes, I let the friend of a friend sleep, while I tried to even out both my breathing and the thrumming of my heart. I'm sure she could feel the quickening of my pulse, and I'm betting she wrote the whole thing off as a crush or just an awkwardness around women and or affection. That was fine. That, at least, would make something resembling sense. That was something realistic and not torn from a bad fantasy novel. Still. I ride the C train a lot these days. That's not my train to work, but it's the train that services my little niche area the best. So there's that. I've learned when the various rush hours are, and I find myself losing lunch breaks and turning down social plans to get on and ride at those times. Maybe Iona really was right. Maybe I'm something out of a comic book or a horror flick or a graphic novel or a poorly pitched screenplay. I certainly fit the bill in how I respond to physical touch. Then again, maybe I'm something far more common. Maybe I am just another affection-starved wraith in an increasingly disconnected world. Nothing special. Nothing supernatural. Just lonely. Thank you for listening to Sea Train, an original short story by Jared I. McGee. All sounds you hear come from YouTube's free audio library and freesound.org. Everything that's being used is being used under CC 01.0 Universal Public Domain Dedication licenses. I certainly hope you'll stick around for our next short story this week. A short story pondering the ins and outs of everyday life. A short story that contemplates why we cannot sit in silence. Next up is Noise. Noise, an original short story by Jared I. McGee. Wake up. The alarm radio plays the pre-programmed NPR, starting the day off with the news. The BBC is reporting rising sea levels. The world is ending. Grab the phone or the wireless charger and put in AirPods. As soon as the leash jingles, the dog is up and ready for his morning walk. AirPods in? Check. Today Explained, buzzing through the little speakers, informing and entertaining and distracting. Down the stairs, around the corners, across the street. Quick 10 minutes around the block. The dog loves being outside, but timing is everything with this commute. Back up the stairs. Transfer Bluetooth connection to the wireless speaker in the bathroom. Make sure that The Weeds' hour-long politics podcast is queued up. No silence while in the shower. Got to stay informed, entertained, distracted. The hosts continue to delve into unsolvable problems, international and domestic. Dry off to that banter. Get boxers and pants on. Take a moment to pour the dog his breakfast and freshen up his water bowl. Get the rest of the way dressed. Hygiene is so repetitive. There is comfort in repetition. Brush teeth, rinse out mouth, fancy face cream to fight the already time thrashing of the visage. Gel in the paltry hair left after that same time thrashing. Treat for the dog because he has to go get locked up in the room for the day. Music turned on for him to listen to, so he isn't without stimulation over the course of an entire day. Switch the Bluetooth speaker back to the AirPods seamlessly. Grab the bag and head out for the day. It is clear out today. No rain in the forecast. Today is a good day to walk. Save $3. The walk to work is only 20 minutes and is a straight shot with only 2 right turns for the trip there. Switch from podcast to Spotify. What kind of mix? Choose to pick up from wherever the last listening excursion left off. This morning it is newer bluegrass. A shot of nostalgia. A shot of homesickness. This will entertain. This will distract. No informing is necessary when taking a walk through one's past, even if that little sauntering is metaphorical and simply overlaid on a daily ritual. 1 block. 2 blocks. 3 blocks. In 16 minutes, the office front is right there. Google Maps overestimates times. It had said 20. It always says 20. Sometimes it is right, though, to give the service some credit. Mandolins and banjos continue to jangle out down-home tunes. Head through security. No real body checks are done. God help this office building should anyone ever actually want to do the place harm. Pop out on the other side of security. Head up to the 14th floor, hopping on a not-so-heavily populated elevator. Leave AirPods in, so the people around stay silent. No errant thoughts. Mandolin Orange harmonizes about leaving those you love behind, making one here and now in this place and these people far more ethereal, mostly removed from reality. The high-pitched ding of the elevator arriving prompts an exit. Even over the tunes, it can be heard. Walk out of the elevator with no interactions with the other passengers. Walk to the desk with no interactions with the other workers. Sit down and take the AirPods out, pausing the song as it was already beginning to decrescendo into an ending. The accompanying music is set to classical today. Classical is both calming and exhausting. There is so much movement in the livelier pieces. Classical can entertain and distract. 8 hours go by quickly. Lunch is had at the desk. There is no time to disengage for an entire hour. By 5:45 p.m., overtime is already being lapped at. Overtime will get the big bosses angry. Time to get out of here and home to the little dog. AirPods in. Stand up. Repeat the entrance, but in reverse. No music after a long day. Audiobooks as a treat. Leap immediately into Fatrasta, running alongside McClellan's powder mages and gods and privileged and warriors. Completely lose track of the people around. It must have been 20 minutes, because keys are jingling and the door to the first floor apartment is opening. Let the little dog out of the bedroom. Boy, is he happy. Get him prepped for another longer walk. Taking a right this time once down the stairs and out. The audiobook still transports to other worlds, putting a fantastical veneer on the world as the walk meanders down the street and into a large park. Head down. Pay attention to here and now only when the little dog might interact with others. McClellan is pushing the waking world away, informing, entertaining, distracting. 30 minutes and it's back to ascending the stairs. The dog wants to play squeaky ball. Throw the ball while turning on the massive television in the living room, praying it still attaches to the Wi-Fi that's being stolen from the coffee shop across the way. Wi-Fi is too expensive here. It attaches. Turn the TV to Netflix, throwing on a murder mystery true crime documentary. Once it loads, take out the AirPods and begin listening to that, all the while squeaking and throwing, growing and squeaking. Dinner is 3 tablespoons of peanut butter. The dog's dinner is another cup of that artisan dog food. The crime documentary lasts 2 hours. Time to get ready for bed. Repeat the morning in reverse. Thinking of life in this way always gets an inward laugh. Leave the television on, so the chain of informing, entertaining, distracting noise does not end. Once the gods of hygiene have been worshipped yet again, head into the bedroom, turning everything off in the living room. Put a YouTube documentary on about Tolkien before pushing the power button on the TV. We cannot have silence. Throw the squeaky ball a couple more times before the dog tires out and wants to snuggle up for sleep. Drink some water. Think on the power of Tom Bombadil. Don't take the sleeping medication because it is habit forming. Don't take the prescribed heart pills because who cares? Get bored and tune into the YouTube documentary at the same time. Pause it for a bit. Lie in darkness. Feel the weight of thoughts swell up and threaten to spill over into a waking world after such a strong dam was made all day long. Quickly put a documentary on about Nazis and their locus of power emanating from Hitler. Breathe easy as the kindly British man informs, entertains, distracts. Take that sleeping pill after all. Hold tightly to the little dog as sleep comes. Tomorrow will be the same. Thank you for listening to Noise, an original short story by Jared I. McGee. All sound you hear come from YouTube's free audio library and freesound.org. Everything that's being used is being used under CC 01.0 Universal Public Domain Dedication licenses. That does it for Prose this week. Thank you all for joining me yet again for some adventures. As you continue about your day, I hope that you'll remember to love those around you, tell them that you do, and to embrace this life, good and bad, as it is always stranger than fiction. See you for our next episode in 2 weeks' time. And honestly, truly, sincerely, thank you for listening. See you.